Welcome back to the OC story. This time we're doing part 22. This is the story where you guys help me to create the two main characters and then you guys vote on what happens next. I've got a rough idea of a few little bits and pieces we're going to start dropping in now, but the general story and flow and what we go to next is up to you guys' votes. I will be continuing to write this down into a book which will have way more detail in it and might take a completely different direction. Who the hell knows? That is incoming way later on in the year, I expect. But for the meantime, let's get back into episode 22 and we'll pick up where we left off. As you might be able to tell, and anyone who's on my Patreon will already know, I am recovering from a fantastic cold with a horrible case of couldn't really talk very well. So I may not be doing many voices today, I may just be describing what people say. We will see how well that goes. Alright, let's dive back in. Eri led Darrow through his old bedroom and into the bathroom. It was a vast space, a huge ensuite with a massive tub in the centre of the room. He carefully peeled the sodden with blood cloak off the assassin's shoulders, poured warm water into the bath and lowered him into it. Carefully, he scrubbed away at the fresh wounds all over the assassin's skin. It seemed Lumens and Maximus had left not an inch of him untouched. As he looked, Eri noticed something. The big, gnarly old scars across the assassin's shoulders were different. He'd expected to see them there, perhaps covered now by new, fresh bruising and other cuts and scrapes. But while they were still there, in shape, the colour had changed. They were no longer old, white, faded scars that looked like they had been there for years sitting across his shoulder blades. Now they were raw, pinky red, as though they'd only just started healing over. Erasmus didn't quite understand. As he brushed his fingertips against them carefully, the assassin hissed a breath through clenched teeth, and Erasmus stopped touching them at once. He did feel something though, just before he let go. There was something underneath the skin there. Something smooth but firm, solid, like bone. Something he had not felt there before. He filed it away in the back of his mind with so many other things, and continued helping Darrow to wash, before putting him into silk pyjamas that used to belong to Prince Erasmus himself, and tucking the assassin up carefully into his vast bed. As he sits next to Darrow laying curled into his side, Erasmus knows he should tell him. He wants to tell him about the fortune teller, about the mist at the bottom of that lake, about the bargain he feels certain now more than ever that he must have struck. But Darrow groans, and his eyes fall heavy, and Erasmus can't bear to wake him with this news just now. He lets him sleep. As the assassin falls into unconsciousness, so too do dreams fall around him. He dreams of corridors, of slashing blades, of cackling voices, of mouths with sharp teeth, of white bursting lights, of pain everywhere and all over him. And he remembers that voice. He remembers lumens pouring out of the dark, straight into his face, into his ears, everywhere. Look at me. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. He remembers how much it hurt, and how afraid he was. The most afraid he'd ever been in his entire life. And then another voice ripples through the back. Castellane. He sees stars. He sees trees. He can practically feel the cool spring breeze across his face. He sees dark brown eyes and a soft smile just for him. And then he feels pain rip through him again, and he curls tighter into Erasmus's side as he tries to sleep. Eri holds him close, and when Darrow wakes many hours later, Tinny has come sneaking in to visit. Erasmus and Tinny talk for a little while as Darrow slowly comes back to consciousness. Tinny asks Eri if he's told Darrow yet. Eri says, not yet. Darrow slowly blinks his eyes open and asks what they're talking about. Tinny says, we saw them. What? Your wings? The two press him just a little. They tell him they had come sprinting down the sewers. They'd been looking for him for hours and hours, delving deeper and deeper, and then they'd heard a scream and an explosion. And as they'd rounded a corner, they'd seen bright, billowing light pouring out of a door that had just been sprung straight from its hinges and come smashing down the corridor. As they'd run inside, they'd seen Darrow tied up, hanging there, and they'd seen the two men fall to the ground. Darrow remembered only the feelings of pain and fear and desperately wanting to save Erasmus from any of it. He remembered thinking Erasmus, and he remembered the pain, and then bright light. That was it. Eri asks what happened just before that moment, and it doesn't take long for the assassin to remember. Lumens and Maximus, and their words, their blades, their nails, their teeth hot, as their breath was hot, as their words were hot, sharp at his ears, at his throat, at his face. Visions dancing across his mind, and then that shout, that scream that had brought him crashing into the depths of fear itself. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. He'd felt that fear and the pain and the love and the desperation, and then that burst of light, and then Eri's voice. Tinny says the light was him. It was Darrow. They heard him screaming. They had run. The door was blasted off its hinges, and Lumens had lit up feathers sticking through his chest, and Maximus had some in his shoulder and his legs. The wings were Darrow's, sprung from his back, fading as they'd run into the room, but they'd still seen them there. Even as they had faded, they knew what they had seen. Tinny then casually mentions that Erasmus had punched Lumens in the face and grabbed Maximus as he went back for Darrow, smacking him too for good measure. And then Darrow had stopped screaming, and the light and the wings had vanished. Darrow blinked then and asked Eri if all of that was true. Erasmus nodded and said yes. Darrow then asked, "You really punched him?" Erasmus says, "I did." Darrow laughed a soft chuckle. "You're beautiful." Tinny joined in. "Yeah, Uncle Eri was brilliant, but, Darrow, are we going to talk about you having wings? Oh, Darrow, are you a secret bird?" Darrow laughed again. It hurt, but he continued to laugh. He said he didn't think so. Plus, he doesn't have the wings right now, does he? The others confirmed he definitely did not. Though Darrow did admit his back, his shoulders, they still hurt and burned. Eri mentioned the scars. He said how they looked different now, fresh, like the skin was broken mere weeks ago. Darrow asked to see, and through a complicated routine, they managed to hold up mirrors on either side of him so they could manage showing Darrow. His own reflection stared back at him, and he ignored all the fresh bruising and cuts. He had never, after all, seen the scars properly before. He hadn't known they existed until Erasmus had pointed them out to him. And as Darrow peered into the glass that reflected back the other mirror, as his eyes traced the shape of those gnarled, fresh-looking scars running right across his shoulders, that voice came creeping back into his mind. Castellane. Eri asks if Lumens or Maximus carved into the old scars while they were tormenting him. Darrow cannot remember. They had blades and they had cut him and deeply, but he couldn't remember specifics. It felt like it had been everywhere. And really, looking at him now, it was true. Tinny says she thinks that Darrow is growing wings, like a bird or an angel. Darrow howls, laughing at the idea of himself as an angel. They sit together for a long time. Tinny has brought them food. They turn their attention to what information they have as they eat. Maximus had said furnace. Furnace was the one who paid for the hit on the king, on the three princes. So this furnace probably works in or closely with the palace, to have an in with the palace guards, to be believed by them, to then go and look for lumens in his hideout. Eri doesn't recognise the name, but then again he didn't know everyone, particularly not if it was a first name. Darrow suggests that it's an actual prison guard. They ask Tinny if she recognises the name Furnace. She pauses and then says, "Nope." They wonder why a guard, or whoever it is, would want the king and all the heirs dead. Darrow thinks back to the flashes of Lumens and Maximus, to what they had said to him. They were angry that his action, supposedly, of not killing Eri and that hit going wrong had meant that something else was now going to happen. And it had to be huge. Maximus operated in Belgoth, so that meant criminal networks from both countries were concerned and connected. And whatever it was would affect two countries then. So, killing the king and all of the prince heirs meant stopping something. Eri says there are some things that only the king can sign off on, and if they had killed the king alone, then the heirs could take over, so killing all of them, that would make sense, but in the situation of all the princes being dead, no heirs of age, the country will be in upheaval. Nothing could be signed off on, true, but no one would want the country like that, surely. What kind of things can only the king sign off on, though? Eri says only the most very important of things. So whatever the criminals want stopped has to be huge. They wonder collectively if something that huge affecting criminals can be good for them or not. Tinny is also worried about her mum. She's been quieter lately, lots of going to bed early, which usually means she's been crying. Her dad never really speaks to them, always busy, always away. Erasmus says her mother, Methalia, used to be cheerful. He remembers her smile and her laugh so vividly, but it was a very long time ago. Over a decade, before she was pregnant with Tinny, and when Tinny was a very young child. Tinny remembers that too. Her mother used to read her bedtime stories, fantasies about princesses and true love and adventures. She would do voices and laugh, and Tinny used to believe in true love. But now she says she doesn't. Her mum got pregnant with her brother and stopped smiling. She never read the stories again. Erasmus says sometimes things change in royal families with the birth of a son. Tinny is sad. She says she doesn't think her parents are in love at all. Erasmus says that nobody in their family has married for love in decades. Even his father remarried for convenience after the queen, his mother, died while he was young. His father found a mistress from a political family and married her to bring her family closer to the crown, to bring more alliances in, and, well, to put it crudely, to satisfy his own urges. Tinny says that's awful. She says she will never get married then. At this, Prince Erasmus smacks his forehead. Married? Of course. Oh, bloody hell, that's it, Tinny. Her mother is sad, or sadder than usual, and had told the assassins in the dungeons, I can't go with her. The criminals are worried about a big change affecting them all across two countries, Maximus in Belgoth and Lumens in Drevdelania. Tinny has been taught about Belgoth and manners and etiquette, and Tinny is this country's only princess. Eri thinks he has worked it out. Tinny is getting sent to Belgoth to marry their prince. Belgoth only has one, and he is a couple of years older than Tinny. This would form a huge alliance between the neighbouring countries. But what would that do to the assassins and the criminals? That's the rub. Why would they not want that to happen? Tinny, however, is horrified and upset, and storms out of Erasmus's wing to go and bang on her mother's door late at night. Eri and Darrow follow her, but they have to go slowly as Darrow cannot move fast now, and Tinny cannot be stopped. As they follow her around the corner to her mother's bedroom, Choly is there, and they all stop. Darrow and Eri hide, and Tinny pauses in the hallway to watch. Her mother is there, Methalia, in the doorway of her bedroom. She stands in a long nightdress, her hair looking dishevelled, her eyes tired from crying. Choly stands outside with his hands held clasped before him. "Just stop it," Methalia says. "She needs you, Leah." "I am useless to her. I am going back to bed. There must be something. Leave me alone." The door closes, but it does not slam. Tinny, regaining her composure, marches up the corridor and tries to go for her mother's door, but Choly stops her, saying her mother isn't well. He looks as though he is on the verge of tears too. His jester makeup is rubbing away, but some still sits streaked down his face. Tinny says she doesn't want to be married. She's scared. She doesn't want to be sent away. And Choly realises that she knows, and he asks how she found out. Tinny just says she's clever, and Choly agrees. He says, "Yes, you are, Tinny girl. You're brave and brilliant, and so much cleverer than I could ever be." He asks her, "Will you do me a favour, Tinny girl? Keep those ballet slippers close to you from now on, yeah?" Tinny promises she will, and then she hugs him, tight around the waist. "Choly," she says quietly, "it was you who gave me the slippers, wasn't it?" The jester hugged her so tight that he lifted her into the air with a small smile. Tinny laughed, wiping away her own tears. "I knew it. Thank you." Choly holds her in his arms and makes her a promise. "I won't let anything happen to you. No matter what. You're going to be safe. I promise." Then he says that she should get to bed, and he walks with her back to her rooms. Erasmus and Darrow sneak back to that forgotten corridor and clamber back into Erasmus's bed. Well, that confirmed it. So Tinny is being married off to the Prince of Belgoth. That could be a massive peace treaty. 2 countries teaming up. Their armies would double their income, their funds, their land and their produce. Very good for both countries. Why are the criminals against it? Darrow has an idea. "We should go ask. We've got 2 criminals right down there in the dungeons. They'll know." Erasmus agrees, and together they head back down into the dungeons. Darrow, it turns out, cannot get a word out of them. As soon as he appears, they're shouting, "Blunter!" and they spit at him through the bars. Throwing caution to the wind, Darrow advances towards them, hobbling slightly. "I ain't no blunter. I was there, alright? I was there. I went on the hit. I didn't blunter!" They start shouting again. "Listen, I was there!" And he starts to describe the scene. He describes the carriages, the night, how it all happened piece by piece. He even repeats what the princes had said and done, which carriage the assassins were put into on the way back to the palace, and how the last carriage had derailed and fallen down the side of a hill. But the assassins say that only proves he was there, not that he didn't blunt out. Erasmus places a hand gently on Darrow's shoulder then, and pulls him away. He says, "Will you speak to me?" They blink at him suspiciously. Clearly, they don't recognise the youngest prince. Taking that as a good sign, Erasmus adds, "Answer our questions, and I will break you out. I know where they keep the keys. So, do we have a deal?" And he offers his hand and gives both assassins that criminal handshake that he had seen Darrow do many months ago. The assassins agree to talk. The assassins tell them that there was going to be a hit on a royal carriage heading to Belgoth sometime in the next few months. Darrow pipes in to ask, "Ace job?" They say yes. Maximus planned it with Lumens, Belgoth and Drevtelinia working together. Eri asks what happened to the plan. The assassins say the plan was cancelled when the hit on the king and the princes was called. A bigger payout anyway for them, so they didn't care. Lumens apparently had talked about the future, about fortifying strongholds, their black markets, their underground networks. The assassins say something was happening that would have changed their world. There were rumours about more soldiers, about the borders being changed, a crackdown on criminal activity, but they didn't know why or how. Darrow whispers to Erasmus, 2 countries combined, more soldiers, crackdown on crime. That would be a powerful force. They could shatter everything. Break all the criminal networks, break the webs, burn it down, and execute everyone involved. No wonder Lumens and Maximus were prepared to kill royalty to make it stop. Having got as much as they could out of the assassins, and seeming to have solved much of their current questions, Eri leads Darrow down the corridor, and they tiptoe carefully towards a little end office. There's no one there. They take the keys quite easily, and release the 2 assassins. As the bars slide across and the door opens, the assassins pause, looking at Darrow. They could kill him, or try to, but they decide to sneak out of the palace and get gone instead. Darrow, as soon as the 2 have vanished up the steps, says, "We gotta go. We gotta leave, and soon. The palace guards will see they're broken out soon, and the security will tighten. It might be a while. It looks as though they've only been fed once a day. I believe they get fed in the evenings. This is today's food. We have until tomorrow night." "Alright, that still ain't long. And they don't owe me nothing. They could tell anyone that they saw me, including Maximus. And they can give him your description now as well, and they will both be in the shit. And I'd be willing to bet a lot that Maximus will come after me." Eri decides that he no longer cares, and he says it. "I don't care who called the hit on me and my brothers and my father anymore. I will be tarnished with it for the rest of my life. I do not care. I will change my name. I will keep tying my hair. I will be a different person. I no longer care. I want you safe, Darrow. And I want Tinny safe. They were planning to kill her. I don't think she's safe if she stays here. We'll take her with us then, if she wants to come." Erasmus was so touched that Darrow offered immediately, without question, that he took the man's hand and kissed him. Then they head back to Erasmus's bedroom to pack and try to get some rest. They sleep in shifts, one after the other, and Darrow dreams those vivid dreams again. He dreams of water lapping at him, niggling at his toes, his knees, his waist, the final gulp going over his head. He dreams of sorrow, gut, heart-wrenching sorrow. He dreams of trees and starlight and Eri. He dreams of vague memories of his childhood. And he hears that voice again and again and again. Castellane. Castellane. Early the next morning, Tinny comes in to see them. That is where I will leave it for now, and as always, I have a choice for you guys to make. This one is a very simple yes or no, and it's all about Tinny. So, Darrow, who I think she will call Uncle Darrow very soon in this story, has immediately swooped in and said, we could take her with us. Erasmus needs to leave, he needs to leave, they need to get out, and they want to potentially take Tinny with them. So the question for you guys is, would she say yes? What do you think? Would Tinny want to go with them and leave the palace? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments down below. And thank you for sticking with me while I get through this ridiculous cold that wiped out my voice for a while. I love you all, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye bye.